Who, what, when, where, why. Brought to you by the Connecticut General Life Insurance Company. At Connecticut General, we do things a little differently.
Tonight, Report from Vietnam by Walter Cronkite.
How could the Vietnamese communists have mounted this offensive with such complete surprise? After all, the cities were supposed to be secure, except for the occasional, unpreventable attack of terrorism. As a matter of fact, the whole measure of the success of this war had been that we were pushing out from the secure cities, pacifying the countryside around them in an increasingly widening ring. Now all that seemed to be knocked into a cocked hat. How could it happen? Well, let's take a look. Well, for one thing, it was the enemy's timing. The Tet lunar holiday. For Asiatics, it's Christmas and New Year's and 4th of July all rolled into one, with a little touch of Memorial Day, too. And just like Americans, they all take to the roads to go visit their family and their friends. Well, this is a normal day's traffic in Saigon. Imagine it 2 or 3 times this big for the Tet holiday. The job of stopping each of these cars and searching them and checking the people for their papers, why, it staggers the imagination. It staggered the ability of the Vietnamese police to handle, too. While some residents of Saigon certainly had to be privy to the communist plans, there didn't have to be a lot of them, as some people have charged. Just a few Viet Cong sympathizers in whose homes arms could be stored, arms smuggled into town, one by one, or even piece by piece. And then, on the night of Tet, the soldiers, Viet Cong and North Vietnamese, slipped into town one by one, rendezvoused at the arms caches, and the offensive was on. The intelligence people, American and Vietnamese, agree on the same story. They figured the enemy might launch a big attack on Saigon or another South Vietnamese city. But they admit they grossly underestimated the enemy's ability to plan, to provision, to coordinate, to launch such a widespread, full-scale attack as this. There's some odd stories about this intelligence failure. High American sources, for instance, say that they warned the Vietnamese, but they let their troops go on Tet leave anyway until some units were down to just 10% of normal strength. Some American newsmen say they tried to reach the Vietnamese General Staff headquarters and only a sergeant was on duty. There are even stories believed by many Vietnamese intellectuals that Chief of Police Loan and Vice President Key warned President Thieu, but Thieu thought it was some sort of a trick, perhaps a coup, and ignored the warnings. Thieu himself was at his country home at Mae Tho outside of town. Took him 6 hours to get back after the attack. And in the meantime, Vice President Key signed the first defensive orders, and many Vietnamese intellectuals thought that indeed Key had engineered a coup. There was even a suspicion that some of the police on checkpoint duty on the highways outside of town accepted bribes instead of identity papers, all in the spirit of Tet, and that many communists got in that way. But with all of this planning, what did the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong hope to accomplish? Well, we talked to a longtime expert on the Viet Cong who translated many of the captured documents and interrogated prisoners. Douglas Pike, about that.
Well, I think that General Giap, who I see as the master architect of the offensive, was trying to do 3 things. I think he was trying to cause the disintegration of ARVN, the Vietnamese Armed Forces, as an organized military system. I think he was trying to cause an uprising of people in the cities, civilians, in a kind of spontaneous outburst of support for the Viet Cong. And I think he was trying to throw a monkey wrench into what he considers the well-oiled American military machine here. It seems to me all the evidence trying to put things together after this battle, that those were his major calculations.
If the communist intention was to take and seize the cities, they came closer here at Hue than anywhere else. And now, 3 weeks after the offensive began, the firing still goes on from here on the new side of the city and across the Perfume River to the old side, the Citadel. Probably a week before this offensive began, the Army of North Vietnam, with Viet Cong support, began moving into the mountains south of here, 1 day's march away. And then the day before the offensive began, January 30th to 31st, they began that march toward the city. Meanwhile, another regiment of the NVA was moving in from the north into the city, the old citadel, from the north. And they swept quickly through it too, except for a small corner in the northeast of the citadel held by the South Vietnamese Army headquarters. It was a tough fight. It was house to house, door to door, room to room. They found they couldn't get into the doors and the windows. The North Vietnamese Army held them too tightly and booby-trapped them as well. They had to blast their way in with plastic charges placed against the sides of the houses. It was such a tough fight that although the American Army hoped not to use heavy weapons and airstrikes against this old city, they finally had to bring them in to begin to win the battle. The destruction here was almost total. There's scarcely an inhabitable building in the city of Hue. Whatever price the communists paid for this offensive, the price to the Allied cause was high. For if our intention is to restore normalcy, peace, serenity to this country, the destruction of those qualities in this, the most historical and probably serene of all South Vietnam cities, is obviously a setback. Now, a job no one had dreamed we were going to have to undertake. It is now the rebuilding of an entire city and the lives of the people in it. What did the communists hope to achieve by this attack on the cities? As to their ultimate objective, their maximum goal, prisoner interrogations and captured documents seem to leave no doubt. They hoped, at the best, to bring down the Saigon government and win the war, presumably either by forcing a defeated enemy to the peace table or by actually capturing his capital. To achieve that knockout victory, the 60,000 or so troops they committed to the battle had two prime targets. First, to seize as much real estate as possible, such as the presidential palace, the U.S. embassy, military headquarters, provincial capitals. And second, to kidnap or assassinate members of the thinning ranks of Vietnamese leadership. But they had shorter range objectives about which they could be far more certain of success. They expected the Allies to pull their troops off the pacification campaign in the countryside and bring them in for the defense of the cities. They expected the Americans to commit some of their reserves at least to the defense of the cities rather than hold them for the big battles expected at the demilitarized zone. They expected to create maximum economic confusion and disruption, and to create new hordes of refugees among which the seeds of discontent against the government could be sown. They expected, by destroying the myth of the security of the cities, to widen the credibility gap that exists here too between what the people are told and what they see about them. And the experts do not agree on the objectives or on the amount of success the communists had in achieving them.
They have certainly disrupted the pacification effort for the time being. For how long, I don't know. We haven't yet full reports on the situation. They have interdicted lines of communication, which are now being opened up again. What other effect they may have had, I don't know, on the population.
War damages, I think, have been tremendous. I have talked to quite a few Vietnamese here who have been in Vietnam during the struggle for independence, during the partition of the country. And they all concur in the opinion that nothing has been so serious. I think that it will take perhaps weeks, if not much more, for the people to realize that we are going back to normal. Production is being suffered. You will have the shortage of jobs in the future. The refugee problem is tremendous. The rehabilitation of the sort of the damaged areas is a tremendous job. And I think that this is all the things which the Viet Cong attempt to achieve by this attack.
In that sense, they were successful then?
In that sense, I think they have been very successful.